Good morning, everyone. My name is Katerina Kosmopoulou. I'm a member of the steering committee for the CFA UK Diversity and Inclusion Network, and it's a great pleasure today to welcome Matthew Cameron, founder of LBDG Great, in our offices. Matthew has worked in the industry for over 10 years within talent and recruitment, and 18 months ago decided to launch LBDG Great, a consultancy that aims to foster diversity and inclusion in the industry and help companies along the journey of implementing successful strategies. Matt, over to you.
Thank you, and hello everybody. And thank you to the CFA UK for having me today. So as sort of Katerina sort of pointed out, my name's Matthew Cameron, and I'm the co-founder and managing director of LGBT Great. And we are a specialist membership organisation that's dedicated to developing LGBT diversity and inclusion, specifically within the investment and savings industry. To give you a bit of a snapshot about our vision, what we're looking to achieve over the next 5 years is an inclusive global investments and savings industry which understands, supports and promotes LGBT talent and society. So a question that I'd like to start off sort of to get you all thinking about today is why sort of specifically LGBT diversity and inclusion is important to all of you. And I think this really underpins the significance of what we're going to sort of talk about today. And think about those things, and I'd like to hear from you on Twitter. You can sort of tweet us at LGBTGreat, hashtag Project1000. So today we're going to have a sort of a focus around sort of 4 learning outcomes, which you can see on the screen here, but giving you an appreciation really of where the industry stands at the moment in terms of this agenda, to give you a bit of a snapshot about the work that we're doing, and also so we can grasp a bit more around why supporting LGBT talent is not only important at work, but actually also important to our clients and investors as well. And then finally, start to think about what it really means to be a role model and how all of you can take proactive steps to support workplace inclusion. So starting off, to give you a bit of an idea, to set some context, why LGBT diversity inclusion is important for our industry, and specifically where we are at the moment. And I think we have to sort of consider that we are working against a backdrop of an industry that is behind when it comes to diversity and inclusion, although there is great momentum and desire now to make a change. But we are sort of 76% made up of one identity group, and only 4% of investing decisions are currently made by women in the UK. We've got a huge gender pay gap, actually one of the worst when we look at the sectors, although there's some great work now happening to try and rectify that. 1% of money managers are black only, 3% identify as LGBT. Of those 3%, 40% say that banter is a number one concern for them, and 63% that they don't see any visible role models or allies. We looked at this a bit more specifically in 2018 with our sort of global study, and without sort of talking around too much around the stats, because they are sort of evident. And one of the things we can offer as well is a copy of this report afterwards, if you wish. But the 2018 study was important because it looked at the sort of the lived experiences, and really was the first study of its kind. And these are the 5 key insights that we got from the study. So the point around banter, LGBT policy information is important, lack of visibility, LGBT inclusion really does matter when it comes to sort of talent attraction and retention, and for people aged 25 to 44, it's a very important issue which they care deeply about. The couple of sort of snapshots here just to break down those stats a little bit more for you, and as I say, we'd be more than comfortable to share a free copy of this report for anybody that's participating today. But the point around banter is that this is sometimes not necessarily done in a way which is malicious or sort of intended to cause harm, but we need to be more conscious as an industry about how some of the things that we can say can impact others. The second point here was around LGBT policy formation. Only 50% of people or LGBT participants in this study were aware that the sort of LGBT policies were in place, and here we made some organisational recommendations which you can see here on the screen. Thirdly, there's a lack of LGBT visibility, specifically around role models and networks, and I think one of the questions that we're going to explore a little later on together is around why this is. But 54% that there's no LGBT network in place. Recent findings actually from the study this year lead us to conclude that actually this stat is quite a lot higher. And then the fourth point here around the insight was looking at how LGBT inclusivity and diversity can actually impact when it comes to trying to attract diverse talent. 46% of LGBT people in our industry are looking to see visual demonstration and say that this is important to them when they are making an employment decision. And finally, number 5, when we talked about before, I think there's vast intergenerational differences in terms of people's exposure and sort of fluency in the LGBT agenda. But what we're finding is that there's a greater number of sort of people coming through now that are just expecting that diversity and inclusion, specifically LGBT, is there. So we've got a big obligation to make sure that we can help firms develop that inclusivity. Okay, so moving on, when we sort of looked at our sort of the research and development before we sort of set up LGBT Great, I wanted to share sort of 5 insights that we came across that we sort of felt and what we were hearing from the industry, but these were the 5 barriers. So I think hesitancy around sort of really driving the agenda forward, a bit of a worry actually, a reputation and image. We haven't done much around this yet, so we don't want to look bad, so we don't want to kind of put our head above a parapet, so to speak. Momentum was a big problem as well. We get a network off the ground, it's fantastic, it does loads of great work, but how do we keep it going? That's a big challenge for a lot of firms. One size doesn't fit all. How do we actually sort of measure diversity and inclusion? And there's a lot of other sort of metrics out there. There's the fabulous sort of Stonewater Quality Index, which looks at every single sector. To date, there's no representation of our industry in the top 100 when we look at the buy side, which is significant. And I think that rules out the question why. So what we tried to do was sort of provide some actions and things that firms can do to try and substantiate sort of what they're doing. If we look sort of more globally around the increasing importance of LGBT diversity and inclusion and why specifically the industry needs to invest in this, again, the stats speak for themselves, but it provides obviously huge access to a global market. Young people, increasingly are looking now for demonstration of equality in practice. And that's where they're choosing to spend and invest their money. So much so that 78% of LGBT people, family and their friends say that they would work with a brand, invest in a company that has that sort of element of inclusivity that they can see. Clearly, there's a big point around companies that have some form of LGBT diversity outperforms companies that don't. Custom benchmark that came from sort of Credit Suisse in 2016 actually concluded that was over 3% better performance from companies that had some form of LGBT plus diversity. So the business case has been done for quite a while, really. And there's a few extra sort of stats here for you as well, if you are sort of interested. And this came out of our Aiming for Great report earlier this year. Again, we're happy to share a copy of that with anybody today. But specifically future talents, how can LGBT diversity help our industry? And I think there's a big point now around there's lots of intergenerational differences within our industry. People from all different demographics, different age groups, every one of those has a different set of beliefs, values, want to be managed differently. And actually, the real thing now about getting diversity and inclusion to happen in our sector is really getting this what we call sort of inclusive leadership. How can we manage teams who are very diverse, very different backgrounds, different age groups, etc. So inclusive leadership is kind of a key way in which our industry can make progress across all diversities. But it just so happens that LGBT talent possess a lot of the competencies and the characteristics that go into developing inclusive leaders. So what I mean by this, specifically to share with you here, are things like agility, emotional intelligence, empathy, resilience, connectivity, collaboration. And these are all of the quotients that we look at when we look at inclusive leadership. And LGBT talent have these in abundance based on the experience of their lived identity and all of the skills that they develop through the course of their life. So this can have a big impact by driving more engagement within teams. This is proven now in global research. EY did a fantastic piece a number of years ago, which basically proved that teams that are managed by inclusive leaders outperform those that don't based on increased engagement levels. So this really does work. And this is an opportunity for our industry to really develop. I'll share with you here now just a couple of statistics that prove this within our industry. So quite a pertinent sort of stat that came out of our 2019 Aiming for Great report. 0% of investments and saving firms currently recognise the specific skills that LGBT talent offers, despite 94% of LGBT employees recognising that their LGBT talents were a positive enhancement to their skills and competencies. So there's a real void, a real gap between how LGBT talent perceives itself based on skills like inclusiveness, authenticity, empathy, resilience, etc., versus how the industry is actually thinking about talent. And this spills out a bigger question: is that diversity at the moment is, in our industry anyway, is thought of in categories, representation, but we're not actually thinking about what each group can bring. And we're not thinking about that. So that's something that the industry is starting to wake up to. But hopefully it's a point which you'll take away today. And then to the left here, you'll see a study by the American organizational psychologist Kirk Snyder, the G quotient, which looks at this concept of LGBT and inclusive leadership, if you're interested in reading more. Just want to give you a little bit of an overview, actually, of how LGBT Great is working before we get on to perhaps the richer part of the questions and sort of the conversation today. But LGBT Great, we're specifically focused on working with the investments and savings industry, and you can see on the screen right now a number of our member firms who we're working with currently, which we're delighted to be working with such a global range of businesses, and it's really encouraging that our industry is really starting to step up to the plate now when it comes to this agenda. So for everybody out there, really inspiring. So in terms of what we're sort of aiming to do, I think really achieving LGBT diversity and inclusion has to be thought about from these 6 perspectives. So the first is people, talent, and culture, and the impact then that can have on clients, society, and investors. And what we're aiming to do is, through our 3 strategic pillars, is to be able to help all 6 of those elements. And to explain a little bit more about what I mean about that, let's look at our 3 sort of core pillars here. So we have insights, visibility, and outreach. Again, I won't sort of read through on the screen, but insights is really about bringing this conversation to the industry, driving the awareness, getting people bought in, much more than sort of looking at representation issue, but actually what can LGBT talent bring? What makes LGBT talent great? Visibility is a fantastic sort of way of helping firms to substantiate and promote and amplify the support that exists for LGBT talent. And again, this is something that we need to work hard on because at the moment there's a very limited visibility in our industry. Despite sort of legal, banking, insurance, fashion, retail, travel, there's much more visibility in those sectors than is in ours. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about at the end of this short talk on how you can also contribute to Project 1000. And finally, outreach programs. So it's taking all of the stuff that's that the firms are doing and really amplifying that through strategic partnerships with organisations such as EY, our media partner, Last Word Media, and of course working with organisations like the CFA. And what binds those 3 pillars together is our industry benchmarking tool, which enables firms to really sort of substantiate what they're doing around the agenda, to review, measure, and track progress. So hopefully this gives you some confidence that our industry is now not starting to sort of just say we're doing LGBT inclusion, but actually also demonstrate to you what they're doing that's quantifiable. So the IBIT really is there to sort of demonstrate strengths and weaknesses. There's 5 sort of key points to this, which you can see on the screen at the moment. But I think what's exciting is this is the real first measure for the industry that's providing that objective view. It's broken down into sort of various categories, which you can see on the screen at the moment, which gives organisations opportunity to find out what they're doing that's great, but also to focus on the things that really matter to all of us in terms of getting those things right. Okay, so we're coming on to sort of the sort of final part of the official slide deck before we get into the sort of the questions and sort of the conversation. But really, I want to talk to you a bit more about Project 1000, so visibility of role models and role modelship and what that means and how you can get involved. So essentially, role models, show us how to perform a skill and achieve a goal. They influence our behaviours. They also show us that a goal is attainable, so the representations are possible, and they make a goal desirable, so they're inspirational. So role models are there to help us really sort of believe that if others can achieve something, so can we. But I think it's so much more than that. It's about sort of how are we behaving in our industry, how are we encouraging others, are we putting our time into the service of others regardless of their background and the DNA, because the big point here is that you can't be what you can't see, and that is something that we feel and believe in incredibly strongly at LGBT Great. And what's been really inspiring is that over the last couple of years, we've run a number of sort of campaigns under the banner of sort of Project 1000. Here I Am was a big campaign that we did last year, which has had a great response from lots of different types of investment firms, pension funds, private equity hedge funds, which is fantastic. And it's people stepping up and saying, here I am, I'm LGBT plus, or I'm an ally, I'm non-LGBT plus, but I'm here as a support, and I believe in this agenda, and we're here if you need to talk to us. And the impact that had has been seismic in terms of getting other firms to start having the conversation. And this gives you a bit of a snapshot of Project 1000 in a bit more detail. Some of the faces you may recognise, sort of some of these from lots of sort of different firms. But when we started out 18 months ago, obviously 0 role models, 0 visibility. We're now about 350 global role models in over 60 firms right across the world. So it just goes to show that people are really now waking up to this agenda. And this Pride actually was the first time that a collection of executives and board level representatives from the sector that we serve actually stepped into the light as LGBT plus and allies to say our industry is open to LGBT. And this was really inspiring for us because it really does show that there's commitment from leadership to really sort of change the dial. We have representatives here from massive global businesses such as Northern Trust, Janus Henderson, Schroders, lots of other firms as well. And you may notice sort of Will's face on here as well, who of course is the CEO of the sort of the CFA UK. So it's fantastic that we're getting sort of this support, and we hope that this has a real impact in making the place a better place. So the industry a better place for LGBT people. So here's a quick snapshot, and this would be good to get you involved as well. So Project 1000, we want to encourage as much collaboration as possible. So if you are LGBT plus, or you're an ally, or anything else that you sort of identify as, then we'd love to feature you in the project, as a beacon to others, to sort of help and inspire and motivate others to do the same. And very, very easy. You need to sort of, I guess, go to contact us after this, and we'll tell you a bit more how to do that in a second. Have a conversation with us, find out why you're passionate about the agenda, a bit more about perhaps some of the things that you've been involved in, and then what we will do is sort of, I guess, profile you on our website and tell others about the great work that you're doing, to hopefully give people that confidence that there are people in the industry that are supportive. So it's very, very simple to get involved. You submit your sort of information to us, provide your social media handles, and then we get that out there and amplify that. And all you need to do is email info@lgbtgreat.com, and the rest is very sort of simple.